Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Borderlands 3 video. Today we're going to be playing around with a bunch of legendaries that I was able to get while playing in the demo build of Borderlands 3. Pretty much everybody knew about this towards the end of the day, but no one really wanted to mess around with it until they gave us the okay to. But in the build that we were playing, if we were to spam the P key, it would spawn a bunch of weapons right in front of us. If we continued to do this, eventually legendaries would drop, and so that's how we were able to find legendaries in this build and play around with them. And I was able to play around with, I want to say, 6 or 7 different legendaries, and then of course a bunch of other YouTubers were also trying to spawn their own legendaries, and there's a bunch of videos and a bunch of footage of that out there on the internet. So today we're going to be taking a look at the legendaries that I found, as well as some of the other legendaries that other people found, and I hope you guys will sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The first legendary, this was actually a guaranteed drop, is the Smart Gun Xxl. This drops off the mini-boss Gigamind in the reveal demo. It had a 100% drop rate, which was really interesting. I imagine that was just for the demo itself, just to make sure everybody got a legendary drop, but I imagine when the full game comes out, this is either going to be a super rare drop, or maybe it's going to be a unique, because typically, when a really cool weapon drops at a super high rate, it's normally going to be a unique as compared to a legendary, but I suppose we're going to have to wait and see for when the full game comes out. So what's cool about the Smart Gun Xxl is it's a TDR corrosive submachine gun, and when you reload it, it spawns these brains that walk around shooting at your enemies. Of course, TDR weapons are super unique here in this game. They have a bunch of different features and a bunch of different things that happen when you reload, and for this particular weapon, you get these little brain robots that go around shooting at your enemies, sort of similar to the Gigamind boss that dropped you the weapon in the first place. All in all, I feel as though there's a lot more to this weapon than what we see right here. I imagine there are going to be more things to it than just simply those brain robots, but that's by far the most noticeable thing when you first start using it. Next up, we have the Conference Call, the fan favorite from Borderlands 2, a gun that at one point was considered to be the best gun in Borderlands 2 because of how good it was when you paired it with the B shield. Now, as of right now, I'm not entirely positive if a B-style shield is going to be returning, but I honestly hope that it doesn't, because even after the nerfs, the B shield was still ridiculously good in Borderlands 2, and it felt like it made everything else subpar. Regardless of that, though, the Conference Call appears to be pretty similar to what we had back in Borderlands 2. The shots from the new Conference Call spread out and hit pretty much everyone and everything around you, making this an incredibly versatile shotgun in pretty much every situation. It's definitely a lot of fun, and I love the callback to Borderlands 2, and I also love the fact that they decided to give it a different appearance. Like in Borderlands, the pre-sequel, they brought back weapons from Borderlands 2, but they didn't really change them around whatsoever, and they had the same appearance. Well, here in Borderlands 3, the weapons are going to be, at the very least, slightly different, and they're also going to have a different appearance. And keep in mind, the Hyperion weapons have those shields when you're aiming down sights, which is definitely going to make this Conference Call a little bit better than the previous Conference Call. But moving along here, we have the Infused Hyper-Focus XZ41. This is a shock submachine gun from Hyperion, and it appears to fire these little shock globes at the target at a pretty good fire rate, as well as bullets that are absorbed by the Hyperion shield are reflected back at the enemy. Now, this is not exactly unique to the Hyper-Focus XZ41. There are a number of different Hyperion weapons which will make it so the shield reflects bullets back at the attacker, but other than that, I really don't know what makes this so legendary, what makes this so unique. Again, it does fire those little shock globes at the target, which is pretty cool, but aside from that, I could not, just from my hand testing, figure out what exactly made this super unique or super interesting. But regardless, it was a very good submachine gun, and I imagine once the game comes out in September, we're going to learn a lot more about the Hyper-Focus XZ41. Moving along here, we have a very interesting gun. We have the Boring Gun. That may sound like a contradiction, but I promise it's not. This is the Elon Musk-inspired weapon with the flavor text of temporary. Now, what's interesting about this is apparently Elon Musk has the ability to name the flavor text here and write it out himself, but right now it just says temp, so hopefully Elon Musk will give us some proper flavor text for this weapon. So the Boring Gun that I got in particular is a double penetrating one, just like the other torque weapons we saw back in Borderlands 2, so the damage is 117 times 2. This may mean that the regular version of this weapon does a flat damage number, especially considering the really strange firing mechanic. As you guys can see, when you shoot, a saw blade comes out of the gun and drives around aimlessly, and if it does does connect with an enemy, it does a ton of damage, but it's hard for that to happen because it literally just drives around aimlessly, and because I have the double penetrating prefix, it fires 2 of these blades. I did notice that the best way to use this gun is not so much to make a giant minefield, but rather get really close, like super close, and go for a direct impact, because the saw blade will hit the target immediately and do a massive amount of damage. Like I said though, the range on this weapon is very limited, but it's definitely one of the more interesting weapons that I saw here in Borderlands 3. Moving along here, we have the return of the Storm, which is an awesome sniper that we had back in Borderlands 2, but chances are most of you guys are like me and you never actually got this weapon in Borderlands 2, because the only way to get it was off of a legendary loot midget or the OMG WTH boss in Digistruct Peak. It was a pearlescent, it was super rare, and therefore not that many people actually had it. What makes this so interesting is shots fired from this sniper create a localized storm near the area where you shoot, and that storm will automatically lock on and attack the target. As you guys can see, you don't even have to hit your target, you can just shoot near them, and then the orbs that are spawned will automatically lock onto the target and do a bunch of damage. It's definitely a very cool sniper rifle, definitely one of my favorite ones I saw here during this build. Next up, however, we have my personal favorite weapon that I saw in Borderlands 3. Pain is power, with the flavor text, "Nobody kills me but me." Now, for those who don't know, this gun is basically just one giant reference to Krieg the Psycho from Borderlands 2. The name Pain is Power comes from one of his talents, and the quote, "Nobody kills me but me," is something that Krieg says all the time while you're playing the game. This is going to be a Children of Vault weapon, and if you guys don't know, the COV weapons are basically like the bandit guns of Borderlands 3. They're known for like high magazine capacities, but instead of just having a giant magazine, it also has an overheat mechanic. You can basically fire these Children of Vault weapons until they overheat, at which point you'll have to cool them down before you can start firing again. What makes Pain is Power so interesting is it really plays off of the playstyle that we had back in Borderlands 2 with Krieg the Psycho. Instead of it overheating and needing to reload, you basically can fire this weapon forever until you die. The quote, "Nobody kills me but me," definitely applies here, because once your weapon starts to overheat, it's going to continue to fire and then start damaging you until basically you die or you stop firing. One of those two things has to happen, and because of that, I feel as though Pain is Power can be one of the cooler weapons in Borderlands 3. Not only is it a super good fire rifle, but it also can be fired basically unlimitedly as long as you're able to keep your health and your shields up, which is definitely pretty interesting. But again, just because it's a giant reference to Krieg the Psycho, this is by far my favorite legendary that I saw here in Borderlands 3, and I cannot wait to get it when the game comes out in September. Now, last but not least, we have the Laser Sploder weapon, which is a torque shock laser rifle that apparently causes little explosions at the end of the laser, which is really cool, right? Lasers equal explosions, apparently. It has a relatively small magazine size, but overall, the power of this weapon is incredibly high. It's a laser rifle that does explosives at the end, right? It's really freaking good. It's a really cool and unique take on the torque manufacturer, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if this weapon did turn out to be one of the best weapons in Borderlands 3. It's really hard to judge because, again, we only played the game for like 90 minutes to 2 hours. We only had a certain number of weapons available to us, and we're like level, 10 to 15, taking on level 10 to 15 enemies. It's really hard to get a gauge of what's going to be really good versus what's going to be really bad, but the Laser Sploder appeared to be a pretty awesome legendary rifle. For God's sakes, it's a laser rifle that does explosives at the end, and it's a torque weapon. It's definitely pretty cool. But ladies and gentlemen, here are going to be a bunch of other legendaries that I personally was not able to play around with, but other YouTubers were able to play around with them. We see a bunch of old school weapons returning from Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2. We also have a bunch of new weapons that are going to be exclusive to Borderlands 3. This game's weapons are definitely going to be pretty awesome. After having played the game a little bit and just running around with the new weapon brands and running around with the new mechanics that we had, then of course trying out the legendaries, this game is going to be super fun, man. Borderlands 3, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's taking the Borderlands 2 formula and turning it up to 11. More boss fights, more weapons, more uniques, more mechanics, more everything in general. I cannot wait for this game to come out. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you guys here in this video. Those are the legendary weapons that I was able to experience in the Borderlands 3 reveal demo, and I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Based on what we've seen so far, what do you think is going to be your favorite weapon in Borderlands 3? Leave your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.